Today's video is brought to you by Card Kingdom. And right now you can get this sweet Scoop Soldier sticker when you order over on cardkingdom.com. Just mention in your order notes that you want a Scoop Soldier sticker when you check out. After a long, hard-fought battle, our Edgar Markov deck squared off against our final foe. Our situation was grim. Our opponent just established a dominating board state with Sisay, Weatherlight Captain, and Rona, Disciple of Gix, ensuring that they'd be dropping a never-ending supply of haymakers on their next turn, and even stealing one of our own creatures to bolster their side of the battlefield. Meanwhile, we were out of cards and soon to be out of time. If we didn't win this turn, we would surely lose. But we had a plan, and if we played our cards just right, we might have a shot at winning this. But before we sink our fangs into the games, let's do a quick bite-sized deck overview. A Markoverview, if you will. Okay, those puns really sucked, even for my incredibly low standards. Don't be cross with me. I'll behave. Edgar Markov is a very straightforward and incredibly powerful commander, largely due to his Eminence ability. As long as he's in the command zone or on the battlefield, whenever we cast another vampire spell, Edgar creates a 1/1 vampire token. The more vampires we cast, the more vampire tokens we get, quickly flooding the battlefield with a huge vampire army. Eventually we can cast Edgar Markov himself and swing with him, pumping our vampire army in the process, but for the majority of the game, Edgar will just chill in the command zone, generating an insane amount of tokens without ever needing to cast him, and there's nothing that our opponents can do to stop it. You could say that the Eminence mechanic is a real pain in the neck, I'm so sorry. Unsurprisingly, we've built a vampire tribal deck around Edgar Markov, specifically an aggressive go-wide version of vampires to really take advantage of Edgar's abilities. We've loaded up with vampire lords to support our go-wide token army various ways. We've got basic vampire pumpers like Legion Lieutenant, Drana Liberator of Malakir, Stromkirk Captain, and Vampire Nocturnus so our little vampires can hit harder. We've got death-related pumpers like Indulgent Aristocrat, Cordial Vampire, and Patron of the Vein. And we've got big boy pumpers that really raise up the deck like the Pumper and Stealer Captivating Vampire, the Vampire Pooper Outer, Bloodline Keeper, and the holy crap how much damage is that with Shared Animosity. So yeah, the deck likes raising a vampire army in a hurry, and then sharpen their fangs with our big pumpers. There's a lot of pumping is what I'm saying. The rest of the cards in the deck also fit the goal of building a go-wide vampire army and attacking with them. We have powerful ramp cards based on attacking with Curse of Opulence and Legion's Landing, and we draw cards based on the number of vampires we control with Champion of Dusk, and each time Edgar makes a token with Idol of Oblivion. We also have a Life Drain sub-theme, which gives our deck some extra reach with cards like Malakir Blood Witch, Blood Artist, Cruel Celebrant, and Vito Thorn of the Dusk Rose, letting us drain the last ounces of life from our opponents after bringing them down low with combat. The rest of the deck is rounded out with low converted mana cost, generic options like good ramp such as Sol Ring, spot removal such as Swords to Plowshares, board wipes such as Cleansing Nova, and protection with Boros Charm. And that's basically the entire deck. Vampire go wide aggro. We play cheap vampires, pump them up, and hit our opponents to death. Put all those cards together and voila, here's the deck that we're playing. Even at a low $160, this deck isn't Vlad at all. It's actually pretty fantastic, and I'll stake my reputation that you'll have a bloody good time with it, soaring through the air like you just don't care. Help me, I can't stop. So now we hop into game one. My first opponent is Goldfish editor Neotic, playing the partners Silas Wren, Seeker Adept, and Tana the Bloodsower, a combination I haven't seen before, but since both commanders have powerful combat triggers, I expect them to be pretty aggressive. Our second opponent is Ankylosaur, which I'll refer to as Anky for short, running the partners Halden, Avid Arcanist, and Paco, Arcane Retriever, along with the companion Karuga, the Macro Sage. which means their deck is filled with expensive spells, and they won't be doing much in the first few turns. Despite being largely overlooked commanders, Paco is the real deal, able to disrupt opposing game plans and generate tons of card advantage with its attack trigger while growing into a huge threat in the process. And Halden is there too, I guess. My final opponent is Game Guy CM, which I'll refer to CM for short, on Kess Dissident Mage, which is almost always a Spellslinger control deck, looking to lock down the board with powerful removal spells while they assemble a game-winning combo. Since my deck is all about snowballing with a huge creature army, Kess becomes enemy number 1 that I must deal with first. My starting hand isn't amazing, but once I draw any land, I can cast all but one of the cards in my hand. Path of Ancestry is an amazing card to start with though, mana fixing, but more importantly acting as a free repeating scry in our deck, smoothing out my draws. The first few turns are slow. I've been slowly casting some unremarkovable vampires, taking advantage of Path of Ancestry's scry ability, and trying to get a read on our opponents. But by turn 3 and 4, things start picking up. My opponents begin to ramp, and CM has been filling the graveyard, dropping down their first threat, God Eternal Kefnet. I respond by drawing 3 cards with Painful Truths and keep chilling. At the end of turn 4, everyone's got creatures on the board. Neotic has Champion of Lampholt, Inky has Halden and Oakham Adversary out, and CM still has Kefnet. It will be tough for my small vampires to attack into my opponents now. On CM's turn, Kefnet's ability triggers, revealing Shenanigans, blowing up Anki's Worn Power Stone, putting them behind on mana. Then CM casts Funeral Rites, drawing even more cards and adding Rolling Earthquake to their graveyard. That board wipe threatens to wipe out my small vampires. Then CM smacks me for 4 in the air with Kess. At this point, I want to start clearing the board of opposing creatures, especially Kefnet, so on our turn we play a land, cast Rakdos Signet, and attack, ready to cast Crackling Doom at instant speed. The perfect opportunity for Crackling Doom arrives when Neotic casts One with Nature on their Champion of Lampholt, letting me kill both the creature and fizzling the aura, a savage 2-for-1, especially when Neotic is missing land drops. Big feels bad there. Anki plays an island and casts Paco Arcane Retriever, immediately attacking and exiling a non-creature spell from the top of everybody's library, instantly becoming a whopping 7/7, potentially casting those exiled spells on a future turn as well. Like I said, Paco and Halden aren't to be underestimated. CM has had enough of the board though and casts Massacre Girl, wiping out all my vampires and only leaving Paco alive. On my turn, I play a Swamp, cast Idol of Oblivion, cast Anawan the Ruined Sage, then draw a card off Idol of Oblivion. The board wipe was a minor setback, but we can bounce back just fine. Neotic finally finds a 3rd land and casts Anger. Anki casts Volcanic Offering, taking out my Path of Ancestry and Anawan along with CM's Morphic Pool and Massacre Girl. This definitely hurt a lot and keeps Paco from having to be sacrificed to Anawan on my upkeep. CM plays Watery Grave and their commander, Kess, threatening to start recurring any of their instants and sorceries in their graveyard next turn. On our turn, we cast Ancient Craving to draw 3 cards, then cast Cruel Celebrant, drawing another card off Idol, then play Scoured Barrens. Neotic plays Edric, Spymaster of Trest, letting everyone draw cards when they deal combat damage to anyone but him. Then he casts Anger, draws a card, and casts Soul Guide Lantern, exiling Rakdos' Return from CM's graveyard. Anki casts Control Magic, stealing Kess, and CM responds by casting Rapid Hybridization, turning Paco into a Frog Lizard. CM then casts Shenanigans, blowing up the Soul Guide Lantern. Unfortunately, Neotic had auto-yielded the turn, so he couldn't respond by exiling graveyards, saving CM's packed graveyard from removal. Then CM plays a Steam Vents and casts Duskmantle Seer. I cast Forerunner of the Legion, tutoring up Captivating Vampire, drawing it with Idol, and then casting it and tapping 5 vampires to steal Kess Dissident Mage. I attack CM with Cruel Celebrant to draw a card off Edric, and we're definitely in the lead now. Neotic attacks Anki with Anger, drawing a card off Edric. Then he casts Navinral's Disc, threatening to wipe the board next turn, but I have multiple answers to it in hand. Anki casts Cultivate, putting a mountain into play and then playing an island. Anki then casts Wayward Swordtooth, then plays Temple of Abandon. On CM's upkeep, Duskmantle Seer triggers, drawing each player a card and making them lose life equal to its converted mana cost. Then CM casts Serum Visions and follows it up with Nicol Bolas, God Pharaoh, ticking him up to make each opponent exile 2 cards from their hands. But luckily, I have the absolute perfect answer with D-Spark. At this point, I'm ready to close out the game. I attack Anki and CM to lower their life totals and draw even more cards off Edric, killing CM with Cruel Celebrant Pings. Then I cast Cordial Vampire, Falconwrath Exterminator, and Olivia's Bloodsworn, setting myself up for a lethal next turn with either Malakir Bloodwitch or Edgar Markov to push the last points of damage through. I probably could have played my turn a lot better, but at this point I'm so far ahead that it hopefully won't matter. Neotic cracks the Glaring Spotlight to give his creatures hexproof and unblockable, and attacks me with Anger and Edric. In response, I steal the Wayward Swordtooth with Captivating Vampire, hoping to block, but then not realizing that the unblockable creatures, in fact, cannot be blocked. Oops. Anki plays Halden and passes. Finally, on our turn, we cast Edgar Markov and swing our entire team for massive damage. And post-combat, we finish things off with Malakir Bloodwitch, draining away our opponent's remaining life totals to win the game. Edgar Markov takes game 1 after dominating the second half of the game, but we've got one more game to play. Game 2 has us playing against Old Wolf 30 Khan, which I'll call Wolf, playing Sisay Weatherlight Captain, a powerful tutor engine that can repeatedly tutor up legendary permanents and put them directly into play. What style of legendary deck is unknown, but Sisay herself is very scary if left unchecked. Our next opponent is LOL Fail WTF BBQ, or BBQ for short, playing Hapatra Vizier of Poisons. Hapatra is the perfect counter to our deck, able to quickly and efficiently take out all our small vampires with a constant stream of -1/-1 counters, preventing us from doing much of anything. We actually played against the same viewer and same deck on our previous stream, and it was a real struggle for us, though luckily we did win solely off the back of our Skull Clamp, which drew us an obscene amount of cards and let us grind through all that creature removal, and thankfully the Skull Clamp was never destroyed. BBQ is our #1 enemy this game because their entire deck is designed to shut us down. Finally, there's Caponius? I'll call them Cap, playing Erebos, God of the Dead. Erebos is almost always the head of a mono-black good stuff deck, looking to generate tons of mana, control the board with constant wipes, and win through life drain. Honestly, this matchup looks really bad for Edgar Markov. Both Hapatra and Erebos are very good at shutting down our creature-focused deck, but we'll do what we can and hopefully we'll find an opportunity to strike. After using our free mulligan, we end up with a pretty bland hand, but I don't want to risk going down to 6, so I keep it. We have some early pressure, and I'm hoping that Path of Ancestry will find us the cards we need just like it did last game. Cap starts things off with Swamp into Bloodchief Ascension, starting the life drain plan on turn 1. The rest of the table just plays lands and pass. Cap then plays another Swamp and Jet Medallion, a great start. I play Legion Lieutenant, bottoming a command tower. I already have a 3rd land and I'm looking for an answer to Hapatra or some card draw to fight through the incoming creature removal. Wolf plays a Swamp and casts Power Conduit, and I'm thoroughly confused and intrigued by this play. BBQ plays a Swamp and casts Hapatra. Now I'm in trouble. Cap casts Felwar Stone but misses a land drop. I play a Swamp and attack Hapatra, ticking up Bloodchief Ascension in the process, then cast Indulgent Aristocrat and Olivia's Bloodsworn. If I can't find a removal for Hapatra, maybe I can just kill them before I get shut down. Wolf plays Polluted Delta, getting Hallowed Fountain, ticking up Bloodchief Ascension, and casts Mesa Enchantress. At this point, I'm pretty sure this is a Saga deck, which would explain the Enchantress and the Conduit. BBQ attacks Cap with Hapatra, putting a -1/-1 counter on the Legion Lieutenant and making a 1/1 Death Touch Snake token, then casts Evolution Sage. With a Proliferate engine on the battlefield, I know my vampires aren't going to be around for long. Cap plays a Swamp and casts Polluted Bonds. They're about to gain a ton of life soon, but I'm more worried about Hapatra killing my entire army. On my turn, I decide to up the aggression, casting Unbreakable Formation to give my army a +1/+1 counter, Indestructible, and Vigilance, so I can smack BBQ for a ton of damage. This was a huge mistake in hindsight, as I should have just left up my mana to sacrifice any creature being targeted by removal to Indulgent Aristocrat. Wolf plays Fibblethip, the Lost, drawing a card and only confusing me more, then plays a Mountain and casts Reality Shift on my Legion Lieutenant, exiling it, and I manifest a Swamp off the top of my library. BBQ plays a Forest, then attacks Cap with Hapatra, putting a -1/-1 counter on Indulgent Aristocrat and making a Snake token. Then BBQ plays Attrition. Cap plays Toxic Deluge, wiping the board. I am definitely in a bad spot at this point. As grim as things were looking, we managed to top deck a great threat with Yehene, Undying Partisan, which is super resilient to removal. I continue attacking BBQ as Cap's life total is too high at this point, and I'd rather take out BBQ first to lower the amount of creature removal that I will need to fight through. Wolf plays a Stomping Ground and confirms my suspicions by playing their first saga, the first Iron Games, creating a 1/1 Soldier token. BBQ casts Reclamation Sage, blowing up Bloodchief Ascension. Cap can't find swamps but finds another mana rock, casting Everflowing Chalice Kick twice. We play a Plains and attack Cap for 3, then cast Blood Artist and Falconwrath Noble, finding Siphon Mind with our Scry ability, some much needed card draw. We're slowly crawling back into this game. Wolf grows its Soldier token with 3 +1/+1 counters from Chapter 2 of the first Iron Games, attacks Cap, plays a Plains, then casts Brago, King Eternal, and Destiny Spinner. At Wolf's end of turn, BBQ sacrifices Reclamation Sage to Attrition, but not destroying any creature. I'm pretty sure this was a misclick. Then on BBQ's turn, they cast Eternal Witness, returning Reclamation Sage to hand, playing a Forest, and casting Reclamation Sage to get rid of the Polluted Bonds. Cap plays a Swamp and casts Mutilate, wiping the board of all creatures except for Brago. Then they cast Exquisite Blood, which is pretty scary at this point. I cast Siphon Mind, drawing 3 cards and making each opponent discard a card. Then I play Evolving Wilds and crack it for a Mountain. At this point, Wolf's deck is really starting its engine. They draw 2 cards off the first Iron Games 3rd chapter trigger, cast New Horizons, Sisay Weatherlight Captain, the Triumph of Gerard, then attacks Cap with Brago, blinking the Triumph of Gerard. Massive synergies here. Just a fantastic turn. BBQ casts Skyshroud Claim, fetching a Bayou and Forest, then casts Hapatra, Vizier of Poisons. Cap casts Erebos, activates it once, then plays a Swamp. I cast Veto, Thorn of the Dusk Rose, and Idol of Oblivion, tapping Idol to draw a card and play a Swamp. Wolf continues to pop off with sagas, drawing more cards with the first Iron Games and Power Conduit shenanigans, growing Brago with Triumph, and hitting Cap for a ton of damage while keeping mana up to activate Sisay at instant speed. BBQ casts Generous Patron, putting a +1/+1 counter on my 2 vampires to draw 2 cards, then attacks Cap with Hapatra, putting a -1/-1 counter on V2, drawing another card off Patron and making a Snake token. Then casts Evolutionary Leap and sacrifices a Snake to it to draw a creature that I forgot to look at, so I have no idea what it is, then casts Golgari Signet. Cap casts Wound Reflection and Nether Void, which should make the Sisay player quite happy since Nether Void's tax doesn't apply to Sisay's activated ability. Without much else to do, I cast Shared Animosity and attack Cap for 5. At the end of turn, Wolf activates Sisay to tutor out Wrath Compassion. Interestingly, Wolf decides to exile Nether Void with Despark, then does the Saga and Power Conduit stuff, and then attacks me and Cap. BBQ attacks Cap with Hapatra and Patron, shrinking Brago and drawing a card. Then BBQ casts Midnight Banshee, gearing up to put -1/-1 counters on all creatures on its next upkeep. Cap activates Erebos twice for some desperation draw, then finds an answer with Black Sun Zenith where X equals 5, which is enough to kill all but Wolf's creatures. BBQ responds by sacrificing their creatures to attrition so that Wolf's creatures die as well. Wolf responds by casting Sundering Growth to remove Exquisite Blood. This turn was a complete bloodbath, putting all my opponents in a vulnerable position. It was finally time to strike. I cast Edgar Markov and send it straight at enemy number 1, BBQ, dealing 5 damage. At end of turn, Wound Reflection makes BBQ lose an additional 5 life, killing them. 1 down, 2 to go. Wolf wastes no time dealing with my new threat, stealing it with the Crone War, and then following up with the Eldest Reborn, threatening value on future turns. Cap casts Dark Deal, wheeling me straight into the perfect card, then cast Crypt Gas and Charcoal Diamond with Extort. I then cast that perfect card that was wheeled into me, Cleansing Nova. This annihilates my opponent's boards and gets me back my commander. I don't have much left, but neither do my opponents, and Edgar is a real threat at this point. There's still a glimmer of hope. Wolf has another surprise for us though. They're not just a Saga deck, but they're also a Shrine deck because why not? Haunted of Night's Reach is cast and Sisay is recast as well. Things will go south real fast if Sisay untaps and starts tutoring up 2 legendaries per turn. Cap casts Crucible Worlds and Extorting. Every little bit of life counts at this point. Then Cap casts Necropotence, a risky enchantment for sure here, but it adds enough devotion to turn Erebos into a creature, an indestructible 5/7. No longer able to attack Cap, I hit Wolf for 6 with Edgar and play Boros Signet. Things are looking bad again. I need to top deck something good immediately or I won't be able to keep up. Wolf activates Sisay to tutor up Temet, Vizier of Naktaman, and passes. Cap draws a card off Erebos at end of turn. Cap casts Grafdigger's Cage and extorts, activates Erebos again, then activates Necropotence, living on the edge at only 1 life. It was looking like there was no stopping the Sisay engine now. But then one of the best top decks happened. I draw Phyrexian Reclamation and immediately slam it on the table. This was the exact gas I need to close out this game. I immediately activate Reclamation to recur and cast Malakir Blood Witch, draining Cap to death. With the control deck down, I just needed to find a way to finish off Wolf, but it would be far from easy. Wolf activates Sisay, getting Rona, Disciple of Gix. Rona gets back the Crone War, which steals my Malakir Blood Witch. Facing an army of blockers and knowing that with each passing turn, my opponent will get further and further ahead of me, I knew I had to squeeze out the win next turn. Luckily, Blood Artist is in my graveyard. At the end of turn, I activate Phyrexian Reclamation to get back Blood Artist. Then on my turn, I get back and cast both Yahenni and Blood Artist, plus Legion's Landing for good measure. Then I swing. Creatures die in combat, triggering Blood Artist's life drain effect. Then I just sacrifice more vampires to Yahenni, draining the final life points away from my opponent. Victory tastes sweet, my friends. And that's it for Budget Edgar Markov. I hope you enjoyed this abridged gameplay video. It's something I've never done before, so I'd love some feedback if this is something you'd like to see more of. If you'd like to catch the games live or even play against me, I encourage you to join my stream each Wednesday at 6 PM Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and until next time, friends, see ya! Thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, help us out by clicking that like button down below. And to keep up with the latest and greatest, click on the subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that bell icon to get alerts whenever we have new videos. And if you want to check out similar videos, click on the links here and here.